Sup, guys? We had, a great day yesterday. 0-2, two sides lose by a combined, 26-7 or something like that. Love it. Just love it. Nothing else to say about that. It's a lot easier to take when your bets just get completely wiped out than if they were close and they lose on bullshit or something like that. That is a lot more difficult to take if that happens. We move on to today. We got a full baseball slate today. What do I even want to do here? What can I even do? I will say I lean towards the over in Washington and Arizona, even though these two pitchers don't actually have particularly bad numbers against these opponents. This pitching matchup is two pitchers that I just shit on constantly, and they could be the two worst starting pitchers in baseball, to be honest. Patrick Corbin against Ryan Nelson. That line is sitting at 9.5, juiced to the under. It's juiced to the under a little bit less than it was. 74% of the tickets and 98% of the cash on the over. I do lean to the over there, even though I think Ryan Nelson actually has pretty good numbers against Washington, but that starting pitching matchup looks like an over type of game, to be honest. And yesterday's game did go over as well. A lot of scoring in that one. Which that was a game I was right about. Washington in the first 5 innings, Mitchell Parker did okay, and then Washington's bullpen came in and completely stunk up the joint and blew some big lead, completely imploded. And I think Arizona was losing by 6 runs or something like that, like in the 6th inning, and they wound up winning the game on a walk-off. That is brutal for Washington, but because of all that, a bunch of relievers were also used. So the lean would be to the over in that one. What else we got here? Oh, my Red Sox have James Paxton back. I'm sure that'll work out well for them. The Red Sox did win in a ridiculously high scoring. I mentioned that I kind of liked the over in that game, but I didn't expect a 14-7 final in that one. But I mentioned that both starting pitchers in the Red Sox-Seattle game yesterday actually had bad numbers against these opponents, so it kind of made sense to go over in that one, and that did happen. But James Paxton pitching for the Red Sox. Now he's back, baby. Red Sox trying to bolster their rotation for the rest of the season, which I guess he kind of does, but that's an indictment of the Red Sox pitching rotation more than it is praise of James Paxton, because there's been nothing to praise about him this season. So I'm not thrilled about that. What else we got? I lean to Houston. Houston lost to Pittsburgh yesterday in the first game of that series, but now I don't know if I can bring myself to actually bet on Hunter Brown, but Houston's gone up from -130 to -162. That line movement might not be like actual legitimate movement just on like the game itself. Like the 130 opener might have been -130, might have been before they knew who the starting pitchers were going to be, because Pittsburgh hadn't announced their starting pitcher for a while. But that is Hunter Brown for Houston, who I've made fun of him a lot on this channel, but he's starting to pitch a lot better. After the first couple months of the season, the last couple months, he's been like a completely different pitcher, and he's been a lot better. And Pittsburgh does not have much familiarity with him at all. So even though I don't know if I can bring myself to actually bet on Hunter Brown, I do think Houston is the right side in that game. And after losing yesterday, they're kind of in a bounce back situation. And losing yesterday kind of made sense because they were coming off a big series over the Dodgers, so you can't really blame them for that. Bailey falters, who Pittsburgh is going with in that game, and he may do what his name suggests and falter in this game, as his stats career-wise against Houston are pretty bad. They hit him at over a 300 clip, so I think that is a pitching mismatch. The two games I'm actually going to be on, game one that I'm going to be on is actually to go right back and play the same team that I played yesterday, but this time I'm going to go first 5 inning on this, on the Minnesota Twins. I mean, they lost 15-2 yesterday, so I expect them to be pretty pissed off coming into this game. I expect a better performance out of Minnesota in this one, but because the Mets pretty much saved their entire bullpen yesterday, and Minnesota had to use, I think, 4 relief pitchers or something yesterday after Woods Richardson really didn't go deep into that game at all. He had his worst start probably ever. At least in his major league career, and Minnesota had to dip into their bullpen early. So I'm going to throw the bullpens out of the equation here, even though I don't think the Mets bullpen is really actually that good. I'm going to take this first 5 inning on Minnesota. You can get a better price on Minnesota on the full game. You can get probably like plus 120 or so. On the first 5 inning, I think you can only get like plus 102 maybe or something like that. But I don't want anything to do with Minnesota's bullpen after they used like half of it yesterday. So that's why I'm doing the first 5 inning. The books also are kind of telling you the starting pitching matchup is where Minnesota has more of the edge, as the Mets are a heavier favorite in the full game than they are on the first 5 inning line. It does look like there is market movement on the Minnesota side here. You see the Mets drop from minus 135 to minus 130. They have dropped, I should say, from minus 135 to minus 130. They are public. They have 66% of the cash, or excuse me, of the tickets. Excuse me. Oh my God. So yesterday I mentioned I was kind of surprised that Minnesota was actually the public side, but now maybe just because of yesterday, maybe also because people know who the Mets starter is today and they don't know who the Minnesota starter is, and they don't like his numbers so far this season, and I'll explain why I still like him in a minute. The public is definitely not on Minnesota this time. They're on the Mets to the tune of 66%. So, like I said, I think yesterday is factoring into that, and this starting pitching matchup, the public perception of it is factoring into that a lot. But 52% of the tickets, 52% of the cash, I can't speak right. 52% of the cash is over on the other side. So 66% of the tickets on the Mets, they're public. 52% of the cash on the other side on the Minnesota Twins. Good thing I didn't say the Minnesota T-Wolves. I thought about it in my mind. But so we do see the public Mets have reverse line movement coming in against them as the line is dropped on them. And Minnesota does appear to have the majority of the cash on their side. So there is a ticket versus cash discrepancy on this one. I think it's pros versus Joes. So I like the Minnesota side for that reason too. Like I said, I'm making it a first 5 inning bet just to take the bullpens out of the equation after what happened yesterday. This is David Festa pitching for Minnesota. He's a young guy, 24 years old. He's a rookie. He's only had 3 appearances in his career so far, 2 starts. His stats really don't look good, which is, of course, why the public is not going to want to come in on him at all. 8.16 ERA, 1.6 whip. You might be saying, Toad, what is wrong with you, man? Minnesota just lost to this Mets team yesterday, 15-2, and now they have a guy with an 8 ERA and 1.6 whip pitching today. What the hell is wrong with you? What are you doing? Yeah, I know all of that, but look beyond those stats, man, and look at what else he's been doing so far. He's got a 15-3 strikeout walk ratio, which is a very high strikeout walk ratio, a nice strikeout rate. That's in 14 1/3 innings. The problem has been he's allowed 20 hits, so he's been way too hittable. 13 earned runs, which is a lot more runs than you would expect, even based on the amount of people that he's put on base. Even given that seems high, and it's because, even given the amount of people that he's put on base, the amount of runs that he's allowed is still pretty high, and that's because he's allowed 5 home runs. He allowed 3 home runs in that one start against Detroit, where he still had a 6-0 strikeout walk ratio in that one, but he gave up 7 earned runs, 9 hits. He gave 3 home runs in that one. So that's been the issue, man. The long ball has been really, really clobbering his stats. And I don't think that what we see out of his ERA and whip is really indicative of what he actually is. I think he is a little bit better than that. I went on him in his first game, and he didn't have the greatest game at Arizona, but at Arizona is difficult, man. He's faced Arizona. Detroit was the worst lineup that he faced so far. And then he faced Philadelphia, and he had a 7-2 strikeout walk ratio in that one in 4 1/3 innings and only allowed 1 earned run, which, of course, was on a home run and 4 hits. So I don't think that start was actually that bad. And they've let him go into the 70s and 80s pitch count-wise in these starts, too. He's gone 5 innings in 2 of the 3. So I don't think he's that bad. For a rookie, this hasn't been that bad, and he hasn't faced the easiest opponents, man. Like I said, Arizona on the road, and then Philly. That's not easy. And his best start was that one against Philly, which is his most recent start. So I think he's trending in the right direction. I like this. I like his strikeout rate. I like his strikeout walk ratio. He's got a 5 strikeout walk ratio. That's quite high, even though it is a limited sample size. He just has to keep those home runs and hits down, man. The home runs are definitely a fluke type of stat that's really impacting his numbers so far. So that's got to come down. He's allowing too many fly balls, sure. So that has to come down as well. But these other stats, I think he's better than what it appears on the surface. So I do like all that. And of course, he still does have to keep the amount of hits down as well. But then, of course, the other factor that we have going for Festa here is that the New York Mets have never faced him before, so that's an added advantage. It should be, even though he's had that advantage in all of his starts so far, where the opposing hitters have never faced him before, at least not in the majors. So, like I always say, when that pitcher first couple go-arounds through the lineup, the hitters have to adjust to him. They have to figure out what he throws. So it's an adjustment period, and the pitcher tends to have a little bit of the edge over the hitters those first couple times through. We're only going first 5 inning on this one, so I do like that quite a bit. So hopefully these home run issues don't continue to fester. David Festa, we're going with him in this one. And on the other side, Sean Manaea. I mean, people are coming in on Manaea because his ERA is way better than Festa's, obviously, so the public is going to come in on Manaea. They, of course, know who he is. They know he's been around in the league for quite a while and been a decently successful pitcher. They have no clue who Festa is. Manaea has a 3.74 ERA this year, which is not bad. His 1.25 whip is a little bit high for my liking. He's got 101 strikeouts and 45 walks in 106 innings and only 88 hits allowed. So he's been pretty difficult to hit. He's allowed 12 home runs, which isn't really that bad either. The 88 hits, that's his best stat. He's been difficult to hit, but his strikeout rate getting a little bit lower than what we're used to seeing out of him. I think he's maybe losing a little bit of velocity as he gets into his 30s, but that walk rate is really high, man. He's putting way too many men on base via the walk, and it's been the case also this month with a 25-11 strikeout walk ratio in his most recent start, given it was against the Yankees, and they still won the game. He didn't pitch well, though. He had a 4-4 strikeout walk ratio, and that went in 4 2/3, 3 hits allowed. So he put 7 men on base, threw 103 pitches in that span. Not very efficient. Gave up 2 earned runs on home runs. I don't know how he only gave up 2 earned runs in that game, to be honest. Putting 7 men on base and allowing 2 home runs in 4 2/3, and he only allowed the 2 earned runs. That's a little bit of luck right there. And the game before that, he didn't pitch well either at Miami, and Miami isn't good offensively. And he only struck out 1 batter in that one in 5 innings and gave up 8 hits, 5 earned runs, and a walk. So I don't like what we've seen, even though those are both starts on the road. He's had 4 road starts in his last 5. But the previous 3 were actually pretty decent starts. Not against good offenses, really, against Washington, Pittsburgh, and Colorado. So, I don't know. I think overall we're not seeing great performances out of him. And going back into June, he did not go more than 5 2/3 in any of his 5 starts in June. You'd have to go back to May 13th, other than looking at those July stats against those weak offenses, to get back to a time where he actually threw 6 innings in a game. So, he's pretty inefficient pitch-wise with all the walks that he offers. So that's not that great either. So I don't think he's been that great. A 29 2/3 innings pitch is what he's done so far this month. Only allowing 23 hits is good, but like I said, 11 walks is sky high. 25 strikeouts is okay, but that's also in line with what he's done this year. So I don't think Manaea is really that good. And then we look at his stats against Minnesota. Most of their hitters have seen him before, at least a little bit, and they've done pretty well against Manaea. They're 16 for 52 off him lifetime with 3 doubles, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, 14-8 strikeout walk ratio. So that is way too many walks. And yet again, a bunch of them are against Carlos Santana, who is old now, but he seems to be the guy just drawing tons and tons of walks. That is the same Carlos Santana that I'm familiar with, right? Yeah, it is. He's 38 years old and he's still around, but he has a lot of walks in his career. Anyway, Manaea has been hit by Minnesota to the tune of a 308 batting average and 881 OPS. Not good stats. Minnesota's hitters have hit him pretty well. So I actually like the starting pitching edge in this game for Minnesota and Festa over the Mets and Manaea here. So first 5 innings, Minnesota Twins. That is the play on that one. Plus 102. I think is the best number you can get on that one right now. That is what I'm going with. And then actually plus 105 you can get right now. I thought I might have seen a plus 105 out there. We can get plus 105 at ESPN Bet right now, actually. So if you want to try to take that, I might have to sign up for ESPN Bet. I've been pushing it off because I heard that ESPN Bet doesn't do pushes, and if you push, you lose the bet. I'm not sure that that's accurate, and I've not liked what I've been seeing out of ESPN, so I've been delaying it, but I guess maybe I should just sign up just to make this play there with the better number just to do it. But also because, I mean, you give yourself the ability to shop around just slightly more with having that extra book. So maybe I should finally do it. We'll see. And then the other game I'm going to be on is going to be on a total. We're going under on a pretty low total here, but I like this one. This is Dodgers San Diego. I think this is conducive to the under, even though I don't think that it's much of a secret here. But the public is actually coming in on the over in this one because both these teams have good offenses. But I think that this pitching matchup is very under conducive here. The odds makers are telling you they don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game, with the line being at 7.5, juice to the over. It's ticked down a little bit on the juice from -115 to -114. It looks like consensus, so maybe a little bit of movement coming in on the under, but I don't know about that. But what we do see is 91% of the tickets are on the over, which is kind of wild. That is a wild amount of tickets to be seeing on the over, just because I guess Dodgers, Padres, they both have good offenses. Public likes these offenses, but they know at least that Glasnow is like the ace of the Dodgers. You would have to think. They don't know that Waldron is a pretty successful pitcher too, though, on the San Diego side, I guess. But the public just coming in on the over on a game with some of the best offenses in this division. So I guess that's the way that it is. But only 68% of the cash is coming in on the over. So the over is public, and we see less of the cash than the tickets, and maybe a little bit of reverse line movement coming in on the under. I like it here, man. Neither of these teams played yesterday, so that's kind of a starting point here. Both teams were off yesterday, so that means the bullpens should be basically fully available coming into this game, so that's good for an under. San Diego is in kind of a bad situational spot as they're returning home from a road trip, and it was a successful road trip. I think that they went into the All-Star break during part of it, and then they came out of the All-Star break and they swept Washington on the road and then played Baltimore. I think, unless all three of these series were on the same road trip, were they? Let me see. Yes, actually they were. So they came out of the All-Star break, played in Cleveland, and then played in Washington and then in Baltimore. So they had a long 3-series road trip, which was 3 games each, so a 9-game road trip, and they bookended the trip with 2 losses, but they won the middle 7 games of the road trip. Very successful road trip for San Diego to move up to within 6.5 of the Dodgers. So San Diego, this is a pretty big matchup, man, which again, that even might be conducive to a little bit of an under here, as you might see the pitchers kind of really trying to go all out for this game here. Defense might play a little bit more motivated here as well. And the familiarity aspect of it could be mitigated a little bit because, like I said, these hitters are obviously familiar with these two pitchers, but as I'm going to point out in a minute, the pitchers have good history against these opposing hitters, and they're both good, like pretty decent pitchers in general, but also having the day off kind of can hurt like the momentum of the hitters a little bit as well. So the hitters could come in a little bit cold coming into this game. And that especially could be the case for San Diego as they are returning home from a road trip, which can lead to some distracted hitting to some extent. So that might be the case for San Diego. Susie here coming into this game, returning from that road trip, even though they did have yesterday off. They have home life to return to. They're probably celebrating a really nice road trip, so the hitters could be a little bit off coming into this game, and they have to face one of the best pitchers in baseball. So that looks like a recipe for not a lot of offense coming out of the San Diego side. And looking at the starting pitching matchup, man, I mean, I think this is probably pretty good. Dodgers, I mean, they're coming off a big series too, by the way, against Houston, and they're kind of traveling back to the West Coast after that, so that could also affect their hitting as well. I should mention, as they were in the Central Time Zone, played a big series against Houston, who are one of the better teams in baseball at the very least, a big interleague series there. And now they're kind of coming back towards the West Coast here to play this game in San Diego. So Dodgers have had some travel as well. And I don't know if maybe they went home first as well, so maybe there is a little bit of a distraction angle there as well. But I think that kind of all adds up to maybe some distracted hitting coming into this. And then, of course, the starting pitchers. Tyler Glasnow, I mean, he's the ace of the Dodgers staff. His ERA has suffered a little bit because he's been bad in the month of July, which is a little bit unfortunate. He actually, I think he must have been hurt or something and came back off the DL. So I don't know how much stock we can put into what he's done in the month of July so far. Overall, he's got a 3.47 ERA, 0.96 whip. In the month of July, like I said, he had not a very good outing against Milwaukee just because he gave up 5 earned runs in that one, but he still had a 7-2 strikeout walk ratio, gave up 3 hits in 6 innings. Not the worst start for him. Then he was out of the rotation for like a couple of weeks. So I think that was during the All-Star break, and I don't know. I think he might have been injured or something like that, or maybe they just gave him extra rest or something like that. So that might have kind of hurt his momentum a little bit because then he came out of the All-Star break. After the All-Star break, he had a bad start against San Francisco, and maybe San Francisco was pumped up to face him. He still only gave up 2 earned runs in that one in 5 innings and 4 hits, but he walked 4 guys, which is not really like him, and he struck out 4. He struggled against San Francisco, man. He had 2 bad starts against San Francisco out of his last 3 starts. So maybe that's just a San Francisco thing. I don't know. But I think that he's in line to bounce back here, man. He's a really good pitcher, and I think he might come into this game angry. He's back on schedule now, too, after having that time off. So I don't put that much stock into what he just did in those other 2 starts this month. He's back on schedule now, and he's pitching on regular rest. So I think that's going to help him a little bit. He's faced San Diego a couple of times this season, and he's done well. 7 innings, 1 run performance with a 10-2 strikeout walk ratio in San Diego back in May. And then his first start of the season, he actually didn't do as well, but he still only gave up 2 earned runs against him in 5 innings, 4 walks, which wasn't good, and 3 strikeouts. But when it's your first start of the season, you're kind of still easing into it. You're getting it back into the groove, back into the swing of things. So I don't put much stock into a first start of the season either. So I think we'll just look at his stats as a whole, really. I think that's the better indicator. We just know he's a really good pitcher. He's got a 147-33 strikeout walk ratio this year and 114 innings pitched, only allowing 76 hits. So Glasnow, I mean, obviously, I don't think I even need to say this is ace-like stuff. His strikeout rate is really, really high. His strikeout walk ratio is good also because of that, even though the walk number maybe is a little bit too high. But that strikeout rate is so high, and he's allowing so few hits that it hasn't even really mattered. His overall stats just really, really good in his first season with the Dodgers after coming over from Tampa Bay, I believe. And then we look at his stats against the San Diego Padres hitters in their careers. We have a decent sample size to look at, and he has done quite well against them. They're 7 for 52 off him lifetime with 2 doubles, a home run, 3 RBIs. The walk number is way too high, 10 walks and 17 strikeouts. So too wild against them with those 10 walks, but other than that, really good. And even with that, the OPS is still really low against San Diego. He's held them to a 135 average and 505 OPS. San Diego, needless to say, has not done well against Glasnow when they've faced him, so that's good. And then on the other side, Matt Waldron is pitching, and he is putting together a pretty good season, man. As a 27-year-old, he's, I believe, like basically the only knuckleball pitcher left in baseball. It has been working for him after kind of a rough start to the season. You never really know with the knuckleball. The knuckleball is a little bit dangerous, but Waldron has been consistent enough recently that I actually am fine with going under on this. And of course, like I keep saying, you kind of need both teams to be able to do their part to get this thing to go over, even though it is a low total. Hopefully that's not going to happen here, but I think that the starting pitching matchup is still conducive to it. Waldron's put together a nice season so far with 3.64 ERA, 1.15 whip. He's got a 16-5 strikeout walk ratio this month in 25 innings pitched, only allowing 21 hits and 11 earned runs. He's allowed 4 home runs. I mean, that's kind of the knuckleball thing, but it's kind of been spread out. So he's kind of spread out the damage. He hasn't allowed more than 4 earned runs in any of these starts. And that was a start against a really good hitting Atlanta Braves team. If you throw that out, you have to go all the way back to May 5th to find a start of his where he allowed more than 3 earned runs. And he's only done that 3 times since then, too. He's allowed 2 or fewer in all the rest of his starts since then. So he has actually been consistent in not allowing a lot of runs at all. And that other start where he gave up a lot of runs was against Arizona on the road. And that's also tough. So basically all of his bad starts have been against good offenses, although the Dodgers are a good offense, too. He has faced them once this season, I think, twice, actually, but that goes all the way back. Faced them in May and in April. In May, he Went 5 1/3, allowing 2 hits, 2 earned runs. None of that is that bad. 6-2 strikeout walk ratio and allowing 1 home run. That's a decent start out of him there, even though you'd like to see him go a little bit deeper, especially because he only threw 82 pitches in that one. But he's been throwing more pitches in a lot of his starts more recently, so they've been letting him be unleashed a little bit. And in his other start was really early in the season on the road at the Dodgers. 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run allowed. So even though he walked 4 guys in that game and was struggling to control the knuckleball a little bit, he also struck out 4 in the game. Still, he only allowed 1 hit, didn't allow any home runs, so he limited the damage in that one too. So he's been pretty decent against them. Overall, this season, his stats aren't bad. 103 strikeouts and 33 walks and only 104 hits allowed and 118 and 2/3 innings pitched. That's good, man. And only 13 home runs allowed isn't that bad either, really, for a guy who throws the knuckleball, and that can get you in trouble a lot of the time. But as it tends to lead to you allowing a lot of fly balls, which in his case it does. But his strikeout walk ratio is pretty good. His strikeout rate's not that low. This isn't that bad, man. His control has actually been pretty good for a knuckleballer, and he's not allowed that many hits either. So he has been pretty difficult to hit. And in his career against the Dodgers hitters, which of course we do have a sample size here. Actually, the sample size isn't that big. It's 25 at bats. So the sample size is actually less than you might think. So even though, like I said, there is familiarity between these two teams, I think that it is fairly limited. And for Waldron, I think it might all just be kind of this year. I mean, Waldron is still, even though he's 27, this is only his second start in the majors, and I think, or second season in the majors, and I think a lot of it was maybe him trying to get going, get command on the knuckleball, whatever. But against the Dodgers, in those 25 at bats, he's only allowed 1 hit, and it was a single. No extra base hits, no earned runs, no RBIs at least, driven in by any of the Dodgers hitters currently in their lineup. He does have a 7-7 strikeout walk ratio against them. So again, both of these pitchers have walked too many guys against these opposing lineups. So other than that, they've been really tough to hit. Waldron in 25 at bats against the Dodgers, that amounts to an 0.40 batting average and 290 OPS. So really good numbers there in limited sample size, but I kind of like it. That's going to put me on the under in this one, man. As I keep saying, day after day, this needs to turn around fast because this has been just a total descent into just complete madness. I'm going insane. I don't know what I'm doing here. Minnesota Twins plus 102 or plus 105 now, in the first 5 innings. And Dodgers San Diego under 7.5, which you can find at minus 108. Right now, that's it. That's going to do it for me. Let's have a winning day for a change. What else can I say? I hate this as we get into the dog days of baseball. Usually the early season baseball does tend to be better for me than like the middle of the season, but it never is this bad. This is just, I don't know what to think about it. Peace.